Right, I think you'll find this research interesting. With the retail sector under tremendous pressure to grow and most key urban areas saturated with stores and major shopping options, South African townships are now being seen as the only option for new stores or brand growth. NAB's latest Roots survey has unlocked some critical local intelligence on a market that has major buying potential. I think what you're saying is that there are too many suburban malls and not enough malls in the township. Is that effectively it?
Well, yeah, that absolutely. But of course, there's pressure for growth. You know, Africa's the final frontier, but within South Africa, domestically, the townships are pretty much the no-brainer now, not only for retail and shopping malls, but for manufacturers too.
You say many marketers prefer to throw this market into one generic segment, but there are key differences, aren't there?
The township markets, you know, you've got the middle-class markets, you've got the township markets, and what we're finding is that it's unfair to kind of box these things all together because you see some key differences area by area, and that's important if you want to grow. You need to get those insights because generic or averages are just can be misleading and dangerous.
There's also migration within the demographics, and I don't want this to sound like a marketing lecture, but you said 80% jump in LSM 3 to 5 into 6 to 8. What does that actually mean? But perhaps more importantly, what does that mean for someone who is trying to sell cars or soap powder?
Theoretically, if people are moving through the LSMs, we're talking about asset accumulation. And if people have got accumulating assets, then obviously they are buying or acquiring and that sort of thing. If we look at the trending, we're seeing a decline in the amount of feet through door, which doesn't add up in that sort of scenario. But I think generally LSMs are becoming difficult to use as a segmentation tool. I think we're just seeing a slowdown now in the market where people are possibly just looking at holding back. You know?
Fair enough, a slowdown in the market, but there is still a burgeoning middle class in South Africa, and that's gold dust for any marketer, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that in the townships we've come from an infrastructure where there isn't a lot of choice of brand and products. Naturally, marketers have said this is a frontier where there's a lot of brand loyalty. But if we take a step back and say, what was the distribution network like in these areas? You'll find that the spaza shops were stocking basic products. Now, as we see the malls going in here, there's a lot of choice and availability, and that means there's obviously opportunity and potential for particularly brands 2, 3, 4, I think, in that space.
But one of the most relevant insights within the main survey data, you say, is that shoppers don't travel too far to shop. People like to go local. In many cases, people have had to move out to shop. The idea is to bring it as local as possible.
Well, yeah. Well, as soon as the malls move into this space, of course, people don't have to travel. Fuel is an issue, even within the township markets where you're using taxis. And of course, taxis, you can't carry too many parcels with you, so that has to be taken into consideration too.
What impact does that have on suburban malls?
Well, exactly. It's also had that. I mean, we've seen a catchment area of 5 kilometers at most in, you know, major shopping mall destinations. So, yeah, there's an abundance of malls. People don't have to travel, and they, you know, we've got a price parity also. So you don't need to travel too far either.
It's called the Roots survey from the National Advertising Bureau, the newspaper advertising bureau. John Bowles, thank you very much for joining us on Mags on Media. All right, let's stay with township marketing. The Springboks have added their names to another campaign, this time an experiential activation called the BMW Challenge. With the FNB Stadium as the venue and the Nelson Mandela Sport and Culture Day as the backdrop, fans were able to test their speed and strength against their favourite Bok player through something called the Sprint Wall, a 13-metre LED wall that mirrored the speed of, among others, Skalkberger and Jan Surfentine.
Magic stuff. Have a look. Looking good, yes. And again, hands down by your side again. You're on screen.
Next person's going to come in here live in the event. They're going to stand here and look at you, and you need to be looking at them. So there's that interplay between you and the people running against you.
Tough day's work, eh?
Now, transformation in the global marketing sector seems to be a slow process, not only in South Africa, but across the world. Nancy Hill, President and Chief Executive Officer of the American Association of Advertising Agencies, had a quick chat to us at the Cannes Lions earlier this year. She was voted, by the way, one of the most influential people in global marketing in 2012. Here she shares her thoughts on the need for a more inclusive industry and the tricks of marketing during a recession.
I think that people are cautiously optimistic about what's been going on the last year or so. We went through a really rough time not that long ago during the recession, but I think that people are now talking more about the value of advertising, and I think that's an important topic. Smart marketers actually spent more money during the recession, but unfortunately a lot of people cut, and the other part that happened was a lot of the agencies' compensation got cut. And it's hard to recover that after the fact once it's been cut. The thing that's really interesting about what's happening with creative right now is that everybody understands that the engagement with the consumer is very different now. And that you can't just push messages out there and expect that people are going to sit back and receive those messages. It's more participatory than that. And you have to really find a true brand voice and figure out a way to have that voice represented in all the channels. Agencies feel very pressured to make sure that if somebody leaves, that person that they hire looks just like that other person that just left. So for instance, if it's somebody leading a piece of automotive business, we need to make sure that it's a guy who has automotive business, and so we keep moving the same people around instead of bringing new people into the industry. And what that has created is a lot of people at the top who tend to be white male and who tend to hire people who look like themselves, as opposed to embracing people and bringing them in and nurturing them to get them to the top. The other thing that happens is if you come into the industry and you see that that's what the top looks like, you say to yourself, that doesn't look like me, so why should I stay in the industry? And many people will opt out. And they have so many other creative options now, the Google, Facebook, the movie studios, the gaming companies. So unless we start to figure out how to embrace people and make sure that we're being inclusive in everything that we do, this is going to continue to be a problem.
Just ahead on the program, while the local marketing and advertising industry needs a wake-up call, we'll also take a look at some new international ads that have grabbed our attention.
News that moves. ENCA.com.